Superman and Lois, episode 2, The Ties That Bind. It's your boy Icon, and we're back with another week of DCTV, baby. So, in this episode, I need a time frame here because in the last episode, the Johnson family or like the Irons family, they were told that they would live on the farm with Lois and Clark and with the boys and everybody. I need a time frame as to that night versus this morning when they all woke up the next day in the kitchen. The way, like, there are certain clips that make you feel like, there's certain things that happen that make you feel like, okay, this is the very next day. But then I'm just like, I know this girl ain't braid her damn hair like that quickly. So clearly some time has gone by. And then Lois is like making breakfast and everything, and like she's making like all this toast and bacon and everything. And I'm just like, you wouldn't do that a week later. That's something that you would do the very next day. And then even then, when she offered them breakfast, Natalie had said that she's vegan or vegetarian. And then Lois was just like, oh my God, because Lois had straight up bacon. Lois had that bacon. And then she was just like, oh, well, she's like, I'm sorry. She's like, I can make you some oatmeal or something. I feel like if significant time has gone by since the last episode up until, even if it was a week, even if it was last Tuesday to this Tuesday, knowing that she's a vegan is something you would find out in a week. And then with that being said, because now we're saying that Lois did it, like Lois, Clark, John, nobody made breakfast for a whole week. Like nobody made anything to eat for an entire week, to the point where we are just now finding out this girl is a vegan. I guess I had a lot of problem with that. And like I said, but then I was like, okay, so, they came into the house and it's the very next morning. But then I'm like, the girl got her damn hair braided and she's enrolled in school. And I'm like, well, I guess the time frame on that just really bothered me. But anyway, so the episode starts, with them in the kitchen. And after Lois failed at breakfast, everybody went, they went their merry ways. Well, when Clark, he was about to get up and leave the table, and then he passed out because he's getting those headaches again. It's obviously connected to the earthquakes, but they don't know that yet on the TV show. So after, the earthquake thing happens, and then, Clark falls on his knees, he tells Lois and John that, he was seeing things, like he heard screaming, he was seeing images and everything. And then that's when Lois was just like, oh, you mean like a Kryptonian consciousness? Superman had Kryptonian consciousness put into his brain. And then she was just like, oh, what if there are like residual effects from having a Kryptonian consciousness put into your brain? And then that's when Clark was just like, well, in order to find that out, I need to go talk to my brother because, he's the only person who would have the answers. But before he goes down and talks to his brother, he heard the distress signal because there were some people that were being hijacked at an airport. And this guy, he had stolen, I guess, a device that harnessed X-Kryptonite, and he absorbed it, and then he ended up getting temporary powers. When Superman got on the scene, the guy kind of like whooped his ass a little bit, beat up the Man of Steel. But before, Superman was able to mount a comeback, another earthquake happened, and he started getting the migraines again, he started getting the headaches. And then that's when the General's goon squad showed up, to intervene and save the day. And they have a new member, because the new kid that's on the General's goon squad is Tag. I believe that was his name, like Tag, the Asian kid who was on the football team last year, who had gotten hurt, and then he got put in the program, but then he ended up with X-Kryptonite, and he ended up with super speed. He walked over to, to Superman, and he was like, hey, Superman, he's like, do you need any help? But right before Superman passed out. Superman is then in the doctor's care of the the DOD, and the General, he was just like, listen, he was like, I'm happy to help save your ass, like pick you up off your behind, but he was just like, yo, you don't work here anymore. So he was like, after today, he's like, we basically ain't coming to save you no more. We ain't coming to save your behind. So whatever's going on in your brain, you need to fix that shit ASAP because you cut off. And that's when Superman was just like, oh, the boy that you have with you, he's barely 18. And then he was like, yeah, but he's doing it for America. And that's going to be, it bothers me that he's still allowing them to wear the S. like if I'm Superman, like I would just rip that shit off of like everybody's chest. But the white girl and the black dude, they didn't even speak yet. So I don't even know who they are, but I said there's obviously going to be some more people. Like there's going to be more like humans that he has. Like these aren't the only 2 or 3 people. Like he's probably got a whole stockpile of it. So then after that, Clark decides he's just like, listen, in order to get the answers that we need, because this is twice now, he's like, I done passed out due to these headaches. He said, I'm gonna do he said, I'm gonna do the one thing that I don't want to do. I'm gonna ask my father-in-law to pull some strings, get my brother out of prison, go back to his, because he even went to go talk to him, and he was just like, oh, Kal-El, what do I deserve? The pleasure of your company. And then he was just like, I need help. And then he was just like, say the words, Cal. And I was just like, and to have Tal Rowe, like, to have him back, it's hilarious to me that he's back and he's just like, oh brother, and it's just like, but in the season finale, after he was defeated, he was all like, oh, I only wanted family. And now he's all like, oh, kiss my ass, brother. And I was like, now you want to talk trash. And then he lied and said that he no longer has Kryptonian power, and then he was just like, oh, take me to my fortress and then we'll discover what's wrong with your brain. And then, so he ends up doing it. He brought Jordan with him because Jordan was going through some stuff, with Sarah. And when they go down to Tal Rowe's Fortress of Solitude, Tal ends up pulling up the Kryptonian consciousness of both of their moms. And when her mom shows up, she's like, oh my God, Kal-El. She was like, my beautiful boy, you've grown up to be a man and you have children. And then she's just like, oh, this is your son. He's beautiful. And then she looks over at Tal Rowe and she goes, who's this scruffy? And then he was just like, oh, you don't even remember your own son. He was like, I was your firstborn. And then she's like, dear God, Tal Rowe, it's you. She's like, thank Rao. And so this is so funny to me. And then he was just like, and it was very. It's like I laughed at that whole scene because of the accent, but he was really upset, and I feel bad. I kind of feel bad that he was really upset because like that was his mom, and then he felt because and it's sad because it was the most like cheesiest line for him to be defeated because. And I even said this in Falcon and Winter Soldier, in the season finale of Falcon and Winter Soldier, when Carly was trying to kill all those people, and then she was trying to kill Sam, and then right before she killed Sam, Agent 13 shot and killed her, and then right before she died, she looks over at Sam and goes, I'm sorry, Samuel. I hate when people do that because I'm like, you're not sorry. Like, you tried to kill him, you tried to kill millions of people, and now that you've been defeated, now that you're about to die, now so it's like, oh, I'm sorry, Samuel. And even Taro did the same thing. He was like, oh, I'm going to terraform the Earth into Krypton and I will have my allegiances. And as soon as he's defeated, he's like, I just wanted family. And it's just, oh, God. So so then so he's yelling at his mom and he's just like, oh, you turned your back on me. And then, and then interesting enough, they took the storyline from the Man of Steel movie where she said that she never even knew her son. She said she never knew Tal Rowe. She never saw him. She never met him. And then when Jordan was just like, well, how can that be? Aren't you Kryptonian? She was just like, oh, on Krypton. She was like, children are manufactured, like they're not born. Like Kal-El was actually the only Kryptonian who was birthed. It makes me wonder about Kara too. Like, was Kara genetically engineered or was Kara actually birthed? Like, that's a good question I would like to have answered one day. But according to them, they said that, like Kal-El was the only one that was like legitimately birthed, and then she said that because she was going through the situation with Tal Rowe's dad, aka she left his ass for the next dude, Jor-El. She was like, oh, your father kept me from you. And she's like, I never saw you. And then he was just like, no, your heart, your feelings kept you from me. He was like, you're my mother. And then he's just like, oh, your real son needs your help. And I'm just here, blah, blah, blah. So she ends up talking to him. And then even then, when she was talking to Cal and they were having a conversation and everything, he turns to Jordan, like Tal Rowe turns to Jordan and goes, look at how she favors your father. And I'm just like, really, dude? Like, we really doing this? And then, then after that, while she was scanning his brain, another earthquake ended up happening because earlier on the Lois side of things, she ended up asking John Henry Irons to go help her investigate the earthquake. John didn't want to go at first because he's having his own flashbacks because like he had a picture of himself, Lois and Natalie. And then when he was looking at Lois off into the distance, like he saw his wife and her. And it's very awkward. And I said this in the last episode, and I'm going to say this again. The only person I feel bad for in this entire situation is John Henry Irons because he has to actually live in a house with his wife, not wife, and his daughter while she's over there banging Superman. And it's just like, it's for him, it's extremely awkward. And she even said that to him. She was just like, oh, she was just like, I know how much this must feel for you. And then he was like, I'll make the adjustment. But he did say that he's officially done doing the steel thing. He was like, yo, I'm not suiting up anymore, because when Lois asked him for help with the earthquake, he was just like, look, I'm just trying to be the best dad that I possibly can. I'm trying to work on my daughter, trying to get her right. And then she was just like, I'm not asking you to put on the suit. I just need your help with some tech to help, scan these earthquakes. So he was like, okay, fine. But he knows for a fact that's not going to be the first time they ask him. And then I'm pretty sure he going to put the suit on at some point. But while they were scanning for the seismic activity, that's when the earthquake ended up going off. And then his machine started registering it. At that same time, Cal was getting scanned by his mom. And then the earthquake went off. But because once the earthquakes happened and then Cal started getting the headache again, that's when Talro was like, oops. He was just like, hey, I'm free, bitches. And he's like, I lied about having no power. And then, he fought Jordan, and then Jordan put up a decent little fight, and then his mom stepped in, and then she was like, son, what do you earn from killing this child? And he was like, I earn everything. And then, Clark snapped out of it, and he was like, yo, get your hands off my son. He was beating his ass. And then she was like, Kal-El, stop it, my boys. They're going at it. And then he was like, you damn right. And then he was just like, I was wrong to trust you. You betrayed me. And I was just like, it's just very emotional. It is extremely like unnecessary emotional. And then, but then Clark, threw him back in jail. And then, but even then, like his mom even said, she was just like, oh, I see the good in you, son. She's like, I see the good in you, Talro. And then Clark had said to him, he was just like, listen, you're going back to prison. He's like, I'm gonna put you back in prison. And then he was just like, it's crazy because like mom still thinks there's some good in you. And he was like, what of you, brother? Do you still see the good that resides within me? And he was just like, no. He's like, but I would like to. And then, Superman left or whatever. So that after Superman leaves, both him, John Henry Irons, and Lois, the three of them had a conversation basically talking about how the earthquakes aren't a result of like an earthly phenomenon. Irons did the calculations on his end, and then Clark's mom had said on her end, she was just like, listen, you're connected to a being that's down in that's down there causing these earthquakes. And then Henry Irons even said that he was like, his test show that what's happening isn't the result of like the earth. There's actually like someone down there. So they were just like, yo, someone's down there like doing this shit. So we got to go down there at some point. We got to go down there and figure out like who's causing these earthquakes, and why they're connected to, to Clark's mind and to like Clark's memories, why Clark can see these memories within this person. Before Lois had asked John to help her with the mind thing, Chrissy had mentioned that a news report that Lois did a long time ago about a woman that was running a cult, that information came back up. And I guess the woman is suing Lois, or she's going online talking about how Lois uses dirty tactics and she didn't get her information correctly, and like she besmirched the good name of journalism. And then Chrissy for some reason just flat out believed that shit and Chrissy didn't even ask Lois like, hey, listen, like these are the questions. She was just like, oh, so what happened back then and blah blah blah. And I'm like, bitch, if you got something to say, just say it. You know what I'm saying? But then later on, because like the story wasn't going to go away. And then later on, Chrissy, like, she ran up on Lois again about it. And then she was like, oh, who's your source? Because Lois said that in order to put that woman away, she actually had a personal source from a family member that was embedded into the cult. And when she asked her, she was like, well, who was in the cult? She was like, oh, it was my sister Lucy. And now I'm just like, hold up. So this has to be a crisis thing with Lucy, because the last time we saw Lucy Lane, she was the leader of the DEO in the desert. Because in season 1, they had an underground desert facility. And then in season 2, when they got on the CW, they ended up getting the tower, like the tower building. Alex had even made the joke. She was just like, why didn't we come here first? She was like, it's right down the block from my apartment. I assume Jean was running, like the building in Metropolis, and Lucy was still running the DEO out of the desert. But obviously, she left the show, I guess because she didn't want to move to Canada. And they didn't bring up Lucy again. We never saw Lucy again. So I thought she was still running the DEO desert, like the DEO desert. But apparently she got hooked on the drugs and she let this lady follow her off a bridge. And then Lois said that she took some pills and almost drowned and killed herself. So I already knew that Lucy Lane was coming back on the show, but I thought she was coming on the show in like a military sense of the word. She's on the show because like she was going through some shit. And we already know she likes black dudes, so maybe her and John Henry Irons can get together and then he can get off the farm. But I am excited to see Lucy come back because, I did like her character. I liked her and James together, actually. So we'll see. Like I said, we'll see what dynamics she brings to the show. But it's just crazy like how they're bringing her in. Like I said, they're bringing her in because, like I said, not in a military capacity, but they're bringing her in like, like fresh out of rehab. So, like I said, but we'll keep an eye on that. We'll keep an eye out on that one. Lois got to deal with that, and then like the whole family, they got to deal with what's down in the basement, because her and Chrissy ended up interviewing like the foreman about what they were doing down there. And she came up with some BS. She was like, "Yo, we're just removing the X kryptonite." She was like, "Nothing, nothing too big." But then at the end of the episode, that same woman got on the phone and she said to whoever was on the phone, she was like, "Oh, you're right. Something did come out of the portal and it's very powerful." And I'm like, "For the love of God, please be Lex Luthor. Please, 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 please be Lex Luthor." That's all I'm going to say. Now, regarding the rest of the cast, Lana's running for mayor, and I'm like, we all saw that coming. I honestly don't know why they even bothered to do the whole thing having this random black dude come to town, because the guy who's already mayor, he's been running unopposed for 10 years. And he basically paid some people off to pay the black dude off to drop out of the race. And then Lana got mad, and then she was just like, "Oh, somebody needs to run against that bastard." And then, her husband was like, "Oh, you should run against her." And she's like, "I already filled out the application." And I'm like, we already knew she was going to run for mayor since last season because she had beef with the mayor last season. So since we knew we were going to get there, the show just should have started with Lana Lane campaigning for mayor. We didn't need the thing with the dude coming in to get to a finish line. We already, Lana had already crossed that finish line, but for some reason we still had to run the race. So, but she's running for mayor now, so that gives her something to do, her and her family. It takes the jealous thing away from her husband, so we ain't gotta worry about that bullshit. And I'm actually interested to see that. Like, I want to see Lana run for mayor because I like her character and I want to see where that whole thing goes. Aside from breakfast, Natalie and Lois didn't have any interaction, but John did tell Lois, he was like, just get to know her normally, and then eventually it'll happen. She got, she's cool with the boys. She ended up, she met Sarah. She got real cool with Sarah because, we saw before that Sarah's dad was trying to fix that car, and because Natalie is the daughter of John Henry Irons, she knows how to fix cars. So she, her and Sarah ended up becoming, like acquaintances, friends. They got to know each other a little bit. She actually fixed the car. And then she was talking to Sarah about why she's acting weird with Jordan. When Sarah went to go talk to Jordan, come to find out, surprise, surprise, she kissed somebody when she was at camp, to the surprise of nobody. And it was a girl. The CW had checked that box off. Because, let's be honest, because of the way the show was going, at some point, one of the teenagers, and then people were talking about, like, even with the comic book, there's a Jonathan Kent comic book where he comes out as like bisexual or gay. I forget. But there is a comic where he comes out, and a lot of people were asking, they were just like, "Oh, is the character on Superman and Lois, is he actually going to come out as bi because of the comic book?" So it's like, because of all that, and because it is the CW, you knew somebody was going to check that box, and then it's like, it ended up being Sarah. I thought it was going to be Natalie, to be honest with you. It could still be Natalie, but it's going to end up being Sarah. I think with Sarah, it's the whole thing about, because the thing is, the whole thing about liking girls, it still feels like it's new to Sarah. Like, it doesn't seem like Sarah was just like, "Yeah, I've always liked girls," and I've always, like Naomi did, like it didn't seem like Sarah always liked girls and liked boys. Sarah legitimately seemed like kissing the girl was like came out of nowhere. So she's kind of like, but then she smiled about it when she got off the bus. It's weird. So I don't know, like confused teenage drama. Superman and Lois. So that was pretty much it with that. Jonathan's doing this thing where, like he's trying to get back on the football team, and then there's this kid that's, trying to like, outdo him or whatever. Apparently that kid is taking steroids, or he's taking some of the X kryptonite. So that's going to be a thing. There's going to be an episode where that kid gets roided out and he ends up fighting Jonathan at the school, or he ends up trapping Jonathan, Jordan, and Natalie at the school, and then Natalie's going to find out that Jordan has powers if she doesn't already, because I think she would know that already. So there's a lot of interesting stuff here. And then there's the whole thing with John Henry Irons, because it's like, now that he keeps seeing his wife and Lois, it's awkward, but it's entertaining for the fans, and we love every minute of it. So that was it, and thank you for tuning in. So there's a lot to unpack here. Like I said, we're only in episode 2. Let me share your thoughts. Are you happy to see Tal Rue back? Were you happy to see, like Clark's mom, the interaction with Clark and his mom? Share your thoughts down below. What do you think about the individual storylines with all the characters? Where each character is going to go from here? Where do you think each character is going to go from here? Who do you think that monster is down in the caverns? Because I still don't know. Everybody was online talking about how they knew who was down in the basement. I don't know who that was, but apparently he's from a different dimension, different universe. If it's not like a roided out Superman from a parallel universe, it has to be, this is my opinion, because at the end of Supergirl, because Lex Luthor and Nixus Pitalik got sucked into the Phantom Zone, I would think Lex found a way to get himself out of the Phantom Zone and he's bringing monsters with him. And he's taking down the Man of Steel. So that's my opinion. Like I said, thank you for tuning in. So hit me up on Twitter and Instagram. Like I said, share your thoughts down below. Hit me up on YouTube as always. Like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Share as always. And we'll continue to talk about all the superhero goodness. We got Naomi coming up. We got Batwoman. Got Legends of Tomorrow. And we're still doing that Peacemaker. Up, and away as always, guys. Take care. Until episode 3 of Man of Steel, Superman and Lois. I'm out this. Peace!